Hi everyone and welcome. Thank you. I want to start by thanking you all for subscribing to this channel. I appreciate the fact that many of you in here, based on what you have expressed, have found this channel to be informative, educational, and that is the intent of this channel, to provide information to Jamaicans, because I have seen too many times as a victim of the abuse of authority, the abuse of power by the government officials who say they derive their power from a specific law. And when they quote that law to you and you look at the law, look at a specific section of the law, if they read the first part of it, they would have realized that their powers are curtailed by some other factor that is mentioned in that law. But they would blind their eyes from what that has to say and is enforcing exactly the part that deals with that speaks to them, and ignore all the other parts that curtail whatever power they've had. I have had it. I have dealt with police officers. I have dealt with local government officials, that's a municipal corporation. And these interactions with these individuals, public servants, is what would have motivated me to share my knowledge with the population, because I know that if all of us, or majority of us, were aware of our rights and understand them and is able to articulate these rights to these public officials, then Jamaica would be a different country today. A very different country. So many times I have to be correcting public officials in my capacity as a citizen, correcting them, pointing out sections, showing them. I've had to file lawsuits to get these public officials to actually pay attention. When you go to some of these offices and you speak to public officials about the laws they're enforcing, you have situations like in some of these municipal corporations that they'll tell you, I never ever read that law before. But these are officers who are working in capacities, who are working and are guided by these laws. If you look in Kingston, you'll see many multi-million dollar buildings are being demolished. Why? Because these public officials who are not reading the laws and are being challenged by citizens who know the laws that were designed to protect our interests as citizens. These citizens are coming forward and challenging these institutions of government. Yeah, because they would have gone afoul of the law as written by them. And that's the sad part. The law was written by the government. The government officials don't even read it and enforce what they feel. So let's have a conversation about this very topical issue, which is leave the police alone. I know many of you would have said, leave the police alone. How them are going to know, say, if you have an illegal gun, or you get, how them are going to know, say, you're carrying drugs or something, or them are know, say, your papers expire. Well, the sad truth is the law as it is written requires, at the very least, that before an officer can do anything like stop your car or search your vehicle, he must have at least reasonable suspicion. And then from that reasonable suspicion, if he has probable cause, etc., he can then do an arrest, etc. And that's a requirement of the law. The thing about us is that we don't understand that how the law is written. The Constitution is designed to protect arbitrary behaviors by public officials. It's a restraint to whatever powers they like to say they have. Because when you interact with them, you'll hear, and you all can allude to that they will always like to remind you about the powers they have. And people like me will remind them that the Constitution put a restriction on that power. And that is that you can't stop me if it's my car. You can't do anything to me unless you have reasonable grounds. So don't tell me that you're just suspect and you feel like you can just get up and say, oh, my suspect say you did this. No, it don't work so. The law says, as interpreted, reasonable suspicion is required. And reasonable mean that a logically thinking person would be able to look at the facts that you have, and having seen the facts that you have observed or you have at your disposal, would be able to come to that same conclusion knowing the law and looking at those facts. And so therefore, nobody just come and say, me ears, I got a report that this, that. If it's not reasonable report, it's not considered to be a good enough report. So, how does the police, how will they know that your papers expire? You don't know. I say last say, you never did for know. You are not to know unless you had reasonable cause. We're not a police state. Reasonable or probable cause or reasonable suspicion. You were never supposed to know. People are allowed by the Constitution in section 13 of the Charter of Fundamental Right and Freedom to the freedom of movement. And in this very nation of Jamaica, we have freedom of movement. And that is protected by the Constitution. So, an officer can't just arbitrarily get up and be like, hands out, stop. And then expect that it is okay. It is not. Because what you're doing is you're making it appear that we're in a democratic society. Because only countries like China, Russia or so, which are police states, people can be subject to arbitrary stops and arbitrary searches. Because those are police states where whatever the government say goes. This is a constitutional state. And the Constitution of Jamaica demands that before an officer can stop you, he must have reasonable probable cause. So, if we look at how our country is running right now, people have lost faith in the JCF, the majority of us. Some would say, oh, don't call the police when this and don't do that. But people have lost faith in the JCF to a significant extent. Somehow, I won't even go there as to why they don't teach rights in schools and why nobody is willing to teach rights. But just always remember, you have a right. It don't mean you can't waive that right by remaining silent. The word is acquiescing. You could acquiescing your right. Silence actually means consent. It's actually a legal principle. It's called acquiescing. Silence means consent. Something actually goes so. Until next time.